So, usually when we talk about really drastic career changes, there is this familiar, almost comforting narrative that we kind of expect to hear.
Oh, totally. Like working 80 hours a week in corporate finance.
Right. And then they burn out and suddenly they're, I don't know, running an artisanal goat cheese farm in Vermont.
Yeah, you see those stories all the time.
Yes, exactly. We understand that pivot because it's a search for peace. But then you look at a stack of biographical sources detailing the life of someone who makes a leap that absolutely defies that conventional narrative.
Completely defies it.
Because you'd expect a leap into the adult entertainment industry to be fueled by, like, trauma or desperation or just some wild narrative of youthful rebellion.
Right, some big dramatic catalyst.
Yeah, but the sources we're diving into today reveal something almost unsettling. It was basically a cold, calculated math equation.
It really was.
So today, for this deep dive, we have a fascinating mission. We are looking at a stack of sources about Donna Nicole Gutierrez, better known to the world by her stage name, Alexis Love.
And we really need to set the tone here because while the sources obviously cover mature subject matter, what we're actually focusing on today is the business side.
Exactly. The sociology, the personal paradoxes.
Right, because it completely fractures our assumptions about why people enter controversial fields. We desperately want to assign a dramatic backstory when someone enters an industry defined by this kind of mature content.
We want it to be a movie.
Exactly. But as we look through these profiles of her life, the reality is startlingly mundane. And I think that's what makes this analysis so compelling for you listening today. We are looking squarely at the mechanics of a career.
It is a massive paradox. Like, how does a woman step into an industry that demands hypervisibility, achieve massive mainstream crossover success, and yet somehow maintain this fiercely guarded private life?
That's incredible.
And how does she execute a totally clean exit strategy? Okay, let's unpack this from the very beginning. Because her origins are super critical to understanding the brand she ended up building.
Like the Sacramento years.
Yeah. And just a quick note on the sources, there's a slight discrepancy on her birth year. Some say April 7, 1987, and others say 1988. But we know she was born and raised in Sacramento, California.
Yeah, that part is consistent.
And her background isn't just normal, it is almost aggressively conventional.
Incredibly so. I mean, the profiles we're looking at specifically highlight her academic inclinations. She was highly proficient in math.
Right, she took classes all the way up through calculus in high school.
Yeah, calculus. And her personal life was really structured too. She had one main boyfriend throughout her school years. The sources note she lost her virginity at 15, but she explicitly pushed back against any narrative that she lived a promiscuous lifestyle.
Right, she was just a typical grounded high school student trying to figure out her next steps.
Exactly.
Which is exactly why her jump in 2006 at just 18 or 19 years old feels so jarring.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, she packs up, moves to Los Angeles, and enters the adult film industry. But again, for anyone expecting a story about a wild child running away to the neon lights of Hollywood to party day,
That is not what happened.
not at all. The actual motivation is almost funny in its simplicity. She had graduated high school, and she simply wanted to move out of her parents' house.
That was it.
That was the grand catalyst. She just wanted to pay her own rent.
What's fascinating here is the sheer economic calculation of that decision.
Yeah.
When you or I want to move out, we look at, entry-level retail or administrative work.
Great, waiting tables or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she had a friend who was already working in the adult industry. And this friend explained the day rates, the flexibility, and how straightforward the actual production process could be.
The logistics of it.
Yeah. So she looked at her options for achieving immediate financial independence. She didn't evaluate the industry through the typical lens of societal taboo or moral panic.
Right.
She evaluated it as a viable economic vehicle. It was literally just a means to an end.
But hold on. Because it wasn't a smooth transition. It's like taking this bizarre, extreme starter job just to make rent, relying entirely on the friend who recruited you to show you the ropes, right?
Oh, the Gold Star modeling part.
Yeah. She calls Gold Star Modeling to get some test photos taken. But then, before she even films a single scene, her friend, her one anchor in this totally chaotic new world, unexpectedly quits the business.
Just bails.
Just bails, and before they even got to work together.
That is a critical juncture.
Okay.
Because suddenly, the safety net is completely gone. She went from Sacramento to Los Angeles, relying on a peer guide, and that guide vanishes.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm struggling with this part of the narrative.
How so?
Well, if I am an 18-year-old in a totally unfamiliar city about to enter a highly stigmatized industry, and my one friend bails, I am packing my bags and taking the next bus back to Sacramento.
Right. Most people would.
How does she not just panic and fold?
Because she didn't view it as an emotional journey. She viewed it as a startup.
A startup.
Yeah, from a business perspective, she was now a solo entrepreneur navigating a highly unregulated, intensive industry without a mentor. She realized she couldn't rely on industry connections anymore. If she was going to survive and make rent, she had to engineer a product that sold itself.
Wow.
She had to build a brand that the market was already looking for.
Which brings us to the math behind the Alexis Love persona. Because the transformation from a quiet calculus student to a globally recognized entity, it's basically a masterclass in reading the market.
Oh, absolutely.
To understand this, you really have to look at how the internet functioned in 2006.
The Wild West.
Yeah, this wasn't the era of sophisticated social media algorithms feeding you content. This was the era of search bars in very specific DVD categories. If you wanted to be found, you had to fit into a highly specific, frequently searched box.
Exactly. Niche marketing wasn't just a strategy back then. It was the literal architecture of early digital distribution.
Right.
The sources detail how she leaned into her physical branding meticulously. She was 5'3", weighing about 43 kilograms or 95 pounds.
Tiny.
Very petite. She had a 32B2532 figure, striking brown eyes, and black hair. And she adopted all these aliases to test the market.
Like A/B testing.
Precisely. She's Alexis Love, Milena, and most famously, the Little Latin Princess. She fit perfectly into several highly searched demographics.
And the Little Latin Princess moniker is where the complete artificiality of the persona becomes really obvious.
Oh, yeah.
You're reading these profiles, and they highlight how her Mexican-American heritage was the absolute cornerstone of her marketing. It was on every DVD cover, every web banner.
But behind the scenes.
Right. Behind the scenes, the sources reveal she actually struggled to speak Spanish.
It's fascinating.
It proves the brand was 100% manufactured. She was just giving the consumer the aesthetic they were paying for, regardless of her private reality.
It is corporate branding at its most basic.
Yeah.
You identify a market demand, and you package your asset to meet it. But creating the brand on paper is entirely different from executing it on a physical set. And the source material explicitly mentions her initial shock regarding the physical realities of the industry.
Oh, the co-stars.
Yes, specifically the unexpected physical proportions of her male co-stars. It was an immediate confrontation with the extreme, heightened reality of the productions she had signed up for.
And you would think that shock would be another point where someone might quit.
Definitely.
But here is where her analytical mindset kicks back in. Instead of letting the environment overwhelm her, she identified the actual mechanism for surviving the work.
Communication.
Yes. She realized that the secret to a smooth, successful production had very little to do with the physical acts themselves. It was entirely about open, professional communication on set.
Which is such an insightful realization for someone that young. She stripped away the perceived glamour and the inherent shock value of the job, and she treated the set like a professional, collaborative environment.
Right, like an office.
Exactly. If you want a scene to work, and more importantly, if you want to ensure your own personal boundaries and safety are respected while delivering a product for the director, you have to communicate effectively with your coworkers. She treated her co-stars not as intimate partners, but as colleagues.
Before we move on to what happens next, if you're enjoying the vibe, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. It really helps us out.
It really does, and we appreciate it.
So she scales the business.
Right. As she masters this professional environment, her career starts scaling rapidly. But this scaling triggered a massive collision.
Oh boy, yeah.
A collision between her carefully constructed professional brand and her highly protected private life. And it happened in a way that perfectly encapsulates the chaotic sociology of mid-2000s internet culture.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, this is a scenario that would be most people's absolute worst nightmare.
Total nightmare.
We are talking about the MySpace era.
The wild days of the internet.
Yeah, long before we had sophisticated verification checkmarks, or two-factor authentication, or aggressive privacy controls, someone created a fake MySpace page impersonating Alexis Love.
Which was common back then.
It was. But they didn't just use it to interact with fans and pretend to be famous.
No, the impersonator actively tracked down her real-life family members on the platform
Ugh.
and invited them to connect with his profile, a profile that was populated entirely with her promotional, semi-explicit industry photographs.
You listening are probably thinking what I was thinking when reading this. How does a teenager mentally survive having her explicit photo sent directly to her family's computer screens?
It's unimaginable.
Think about the context collapse here. You've treated Alexis Love less like an alter ego and more like an LLC, a company you operate strictly to pay bills and maintain your independence.
Right.
And suddenly you suffer the equivalent of a catastrophic corporate data breach orchestrated by a malicious stranger, and all that data is dumped right onto your family's lap.
The psychological devastation of that cannot be overstated, especially because the concept of a digital footprint was basically brand new.
We didn't even have that phrase yet.
Exactly. Society didn't yet have the psychological tools, the vocabulary, or the privacy settings to deal with this kind of exposure. It forces a massive reckoning.
Yeah.
When a taboo career is suddenly exposed to your personal support system, the easiest, most natural reaction is retreat, shame, and immediate deletion of your digital presence.
Right. Most of us would delete our accounts, change our names, and just go into hiding.
Without a doubt.
But instead of shutting down the company, she essentially fortified the firewall between the LLC and her personal assets.
She leaned in.
She accepted that the secret was out to her family, managed the fallout privately, and then shifted her focus entirely to scaling her career even harder.
She just refused to let a breach of privacy dictate her economic future.
It's kind of amazing.
Over her 8-year career, she amassed a catalog of over 150 titles.
100.
Yeah, and the sources note she was highly versatile, working across various niches, though she did strategically manage her brand by developing a strong personal preference for all-female scenes later on.
Right.
But her ambition didn't stop within the confines of niche internet forums or video stores. By 2007 and 2008, she started pushing out of the adult industry bubble.
She walked right into mainstream American living rooms.
She really did.
And this is a pivotal era in media. She wasn't just doing late-night cable spots. She was profiled on Entertainment Tonight as a fresh new face.
Which is huge.
Huge. She appeared on mainstream daytime television, specifically The Maury Show, for an episode focusing on extreme teen videos.
Oh, the daytime talk show circuit?
Yep. And she was a featured guest on The Howard Stern Show.
Wow.
At the same time, within her own industry, she achieved massive validation. She became Penthouse Pet of the Month in May 2008.
A major milestone.
And she racked up nominations for Best New Starlet at the AVN and XRCO Awards. But wait, I need to challenge this strategy for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If her entire overarching goal was to eventually have a quiet, private life, why on earth would she go on The Howard Stern Show or Maury?
It seems counterintuitive.
It seems like the exact opposite of compartmentalization. If you want to keep your head down and just make money, why are you broadcasting your face to middle America on daytime television?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of media at that time, it seems contradictory until you look at the economics of top-of-funnel marketing.
Okay, explain that.
The mid-2000s marked a cultural shift where broadband internet was making adult entertainment ubiquitous, and mainstream media didn't know how to handle it.
Right, there's a lot of moral panic.
Exactly.
Mm.
Shows like Maury used actors like Alexis to generate that panic.
Mm.
They paraded them out for cheap shock value to spike their daytime ratings. But she knew exactly what she was doing.
Ah, so she was using their outrage machine to fuel her own business.
Precisely. Think about it. If Maury broadcasts her face to 3 million viewers who are clutching their pearls, it doesn't matter that they are outraged.
Because they're still learning her name.
Right. If even 1% of that audience goes to a search engine to look up Alexis Love, that is tens of thousands of unique visitors being driven directly back to her monetized websites and DVD catalogs.
That is brilliant.
She utilized their desire for spectacle to permanently increase her own market value. It gave her a level of mainstream name recognition previously reserved for legacy figures like Ron Jeremy.
Wow.
Yeah, the sources specifically mention him as a peer in terms of business stature during that era.
She completely flipped the script. They thought they were using her for an afternoon of scandalous television, and she was using them for millions of dollars in free top-of-funnel advertising.
It's masterful marketing.
But here is the ultimate twist in this whole biographical stack. What usually happens when an actor achieves this level of fame, crosses over into mainstream pop culture, and is commanding top dollar.
They cling to it.
Yes, they launch reality shows, they try to extend their 15 minutes of fame into a 40-year career. But for Alexis Love, the goal was never to stay.
And that brings us to the execution of her exit strategy, which is perhaps the most disciplined part of her entire story.
It really is.
In 2014, after exactly 8 years in the business, she simply retired. She walked away, having hit her financial target, with an estimated net worth of $500,000.
So what does this all mean? When you look at the totality of it, it requires an almost superhuman level of emotional and financial discipline.
Absolutely.
To enter an industry that is historically famous for chewing people up and spitting them out, navigate a horrific early internet doxing campaign, ride the wave of mainstream television fame, hit a very specific financial target of $500,000, and then just stop.
This raises an important question about how we define career versus identity. For many people, especially in highly visible or creative fields, what they do becomes indistinguishable from who they are.
Right.
But for Donna Gutierrez, Alexis Love was never an identity. It was a highly structured business venture. The sources emphasize how fiercely she guarded her actual life throughout those 8 years.
The firewall held up.
It did. While the internet saw a wild, boundary-pushing starlet, the reality was she remained single, she had no children, and her biggest known passion outside of work wasn't attending extravagant Hollywood parties.
It was jet skiing.
It was simply jet skiing.
I love that image. Just a grounded math enthusiast who loves jet skiing and decided to engineer a $500,000 windfall in the adult industry so she could eventually go back to school.
It's an incredible contrast.
It is. Her ultimate plan was always to treat the entire 8-year saga as a stepping stone. Save the money, quit, and return to education full-time. She didn't fade away. She executed a flawless corporate dissolution.
She did. And since her retirement in 2014, she has successfully vanished back into the quiet, private life she always intended to have.
You really don't hear anything about her now.
No, there is virtually no public information about her current endeavors, her investments, or her day-to-day lifestyle. The firewall she built around her personal life ultimately held up. She completely reclaimed the privacy she had temporarily traded away for startup capital.
It is a phenomenal arc for you to consider.
Truly.
We started with a teenager who used a highly stigmatized industry strictly as a vehicle for personal independence. She achieved massive crossover fame, utilized the outrage of mainstream media to fund her bank account, dealt with the agonizing pitfalls of context collapse and social media impersonation.
And then just walked away.
Yeah, she maximized her earning potential and then successfully dissolved the brand, disappearing back into the quiet life she originally set out to secure.
It leaves us with a fascinating modern dilemma to ponder.
What's that?
Well, we are constantly warned today that the internet is forever, right? That every post, picture, and digital footprint is permanent and unerasable.
Right, that's what everyone says.
Yet, here is someone who was a globally recognized, highly searched adult star during the dawn of broadband internet, who managed to step entirely out of the cultural spotlight. In an age of permanent digital records, how does one successfully reclaim their anonymity, rewrite their life story, and ensure that the world only remembers the avatar they purposely left behind?
Just like that calculus student, carefully calculating the exact formula to walk into the chaos, take what she needed, and walk away entirely on her own terms. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.